And we are back with yet another episode of Ball with Y'all. We hope that you are having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever, and of course, wherever you may be tuning in from. Or that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Breaker, or on YouTube, of course, at BWY Productions. We are going into the penultimate weekend of the NASCAR regular season and are just over a week away from the beginning of the college football season as well. It's an exciting time, to say the least, here at Ball with Y'all, and we cannot wait to get into today's show either. Zach, let's get into our first segment of the day. Let's crack it open. So earlier this week on, I believe, Monday, we had the AP poll, the preseason AP poll come out. Zach, there was a lot to unpack there. What were your first thoughts when you saw that poll come out?
Well, the first one was obviously seeing my Rebels being ranked 21st to start the year. That was pretty cool. I'll take that. We actually didn't even start ranked last year. Fun fact. Some takeaways I had. The first one that jumped out to me, and we'll probably agree on this one, is why in the heck is Clemson ranked 4th? I don't know. I mean, refresh my memory here. Did anything change in the offseason that all of a sudden made them a top 4 team from last year? Because last year they couldn't score to save their life.
Apparently DJ Uiagalelei lost like 20 pounds, but I don't think that warrants them jumping 10 spots.
No, it doesn't. There's no way. That was the first one. I thought the top 10 for the most part was okay. I would disagree with Georgia at 3. I think Georgia being the national champion, bringing back pretty much a lot of the same guys, would warrant them being number 1. And then, the other thing on the SEC side of things too was seeing Kentucky ranked 20th overall, being the first ranking in the preseason AP poll since 1978 for them, which was really cool to see as well. For the most part, I found it very agreeable, and I can't. This is the best part of the year. You got NASCAR regular season winding down, like you just mentioned. College football is getting ready to take off. We're almost to fall. I mean, doesn't get any better than that.
It doesn't get any better than that. But to the point of the poll, yes, there was a lot to agree about. But I would tend to say there were probably a few different areas that you or I might disagree with it as well. At least from the side of teams being too high or too low. I'll give you a moment to think about yourself. But in my opinion, some teams that were too high in the poll, Texas A&M at number 6, didn't quite understand why they were that high. I understand that they had a big offseason, but let's remember this was the same 8-4 team that didn't even play in a bowl game last year because of what they called COVID, right? Oklahoma at number 9. Again, I understand that they have a new head coach and some new blood and so on, but they also lost a great deal of talent, and it's also hard to replace the production that Lincoln Riley had last year and in years past, of course. NC State at 13, that kind of surprised me, but also I don't really know that I really care that much in one way or another. USC and Miami at 14 and 16. Now, I know you're a Miami fan, right?
Low key. That's our ACC team.
And ultimately, sure, I don't really care where they are, but it feels like these two spots are really predicated on expectations of what the coaches will do for those programs in the form of Lincoln Riley and Mario Cristobal, respectively. And it's great to have rankings based on expectations, but at least in my opinion, you have to look at the preseason rankings as where they stand today, not where you think they'll be in 5 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever else.
Yeah, I agree. I think the USC hype train is astronomically high right now. I don't really see them being a national contender like a lot of other people do. I think it's going to be some growing pains. Lincoln Riley doesn't just take over a bad or a mediocre program, let's call them, and turn them into a national powerhouse or contender overnight. Same with Miami. The thing that both those schools have going for them, though, is high-level quarterback play with Caleb Williams at USC and Trevor Van Dyke at Miami. So I think that's part of the reason why they're ranked up there. It's also household names. Those are 2 of the 10 biggest names in college football, historically speaking here. And people love to hype up USC. People love to hype up Miami. I mean, every week on College Game Day, Desmond Howard picks Miami. That's like a weekly tradition, no matter who they're playing. So, I mean, time will tell with those. I agree, though. I wouldn't have been shocked or surprised to not see either one of them even ranked, honestly, just given on how the last few seasons have gone. the Caleb Williams factor for USC, I think, makes a lot of sense to see them up there. So to me, it makes more sense to have USC ranked. Time will tell with Miami, though. They have a big test in Texas A&M in Week 3. We'll find out a lot about who Miami is. And then with USC, they're going to get through the majority of their season, I think, without too much of a struggle, besides maybe playing Utah and playing Notre Dame to end the year. But I see USC being a more of a, let's just call them a ranked opportunity team than Miami.
Sure, absolutely. On the side of teams that were too low, right? You mentioned Georgia. I would tend to agree. Sitting the national champion, the reigning national champion at number 3 seemed egregious to say the least. Kentucky at 20, I know it was a big deal for them to be in the poll, like just being in the poll, but I could see them being higher. I feel like they ended the season strong. We saw that brief spat with Coach Stoops and Coach Calipari over I guess it was kind of Twitter and a couple other platforms, where Coach Stoops knows that his program has value right now and that they bring a great deal to the university. And I think that could be represented in the poll as well. And Cincinnati dropping from 4th in the most recent poll down to 23rd. And I understand they lost their quarterback to the NFL draft and some other pieces as well. Sauce Gardner going out to, I believe, Seattle with the Seahawks. But to drop 19 spots, this is still a decent team, right?
I think so. I mean, it's kind of funny too because we talk about how some people put their rankings where they think these teams are going to end up more so than they think about where they stand today. Cincinnati is a perfect example of a team that I think should be ranked higher based off where they're going to finish. Just looking at their schedule here, there's really only 2 games that even jump out as like potential losses for them. Obviously, week 1, traveling to Arkansas, that's going to be a tough game. And then in late October, traveling down to UCF, that's always a tough environment to play too, especially with the Gus Bus going full swing down there too. But for the most part, I think this is a team that's floor is 10-2.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is one of those teams where Luke Fickle is not going to disappoint. They are going into the Big 12 what next year?
Next year.
They need the momentum, and they're going to gain that momentum. They're going to impress. I have no doubts about it. And seeing Cincinnati that low, that's really, it feels like the floor for them this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think they only go up. I mean, obviously they might dip down if they can't pull that one off in Fayetteville to start the year against Arkansas. But that's such a tough. If they compete in that game, they're going to go 11-1. I don't see them losing the game if they hang with Arkansas. Arkansas's got New Year's Six bowl potential this entire season. One other note I wanted to make too, though, about the rankings. Obviously, the Big 12, you have Oklahoma at 9, Baylor 10, Oklahoma State at 12. But how about the fact that 3 of the 4 schools that they have coming in next year are also ranked in Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, which we've talked about it on here before. I think it just further cements the idea that the Big 12 was the poster child of how to save a conference, and it's something that the Pac-12 could look at right now.
Yeah, I would say the Pac-12 should be paying close attention. And honestly, to your point the other day about Notre Dame, the ACC should be paying attention as well. It's really interesting to see how these different programs can kind of look across the country and see other folks are getting it right, and somehow how some others to that extent are getting it wrong as well. Speaking of getting it wrong, what team, in your opinion, Zach, should be ranked but is not ranked in the initial preseason AP Top 25?
Man, I think Iowa. I mean, how many times have we seen Iowa start the season unranked and then finish up, and at some point in October they're running top 10? Obviously, they got to get some quarterback play, as we saw last year. But, I mean, Iowa has been like a top 15 program the better part of the last decade, I'd say. And to have them not even ranked, in my opinion, I think that's a team that definitely deserves to be ranked.
And to that point, I'll build on your Big Ten there, and I'll say Penn State. I feel like Penn State's always a team that at least starts the season in the top 25. Now, they may not end the season there, or they might end up in the top 6 for all we know. There's kind of a wide variety there for the Nittany Lions, but it feels like they always have a pretty good team, a team that warrants a ranking every single season, at least to begin the season, and I have no reason to think that they shouldn't be up there at this point in time.
Yeah, I'd agree. And back to the Iowa thing, too. they only play 3 ranked games this year. They play Michigan, got them at home this year. At Ohio State's going to be a rough one. But then at home against Wisconsin. And those are their only 3 ranked games. They get 2 out of the 3 at home. And we've seen what they could do against Michigan at home. I mean, let's throw it back to 2016 when they upset them when they were number 2 in the country.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the Big Ten is going to be really strong this year, both to your point and my point.
So to build on those unranked teams, a few stats here. I'd love to get your thoughts, Zach. So some trends to watch. In the past 29 seasons, there has been at least one team, one school, go from being unranked to being in the top 10, right? Last year we had Michigan, Baylor, and Michigan State do it. Zach, if you were a fortune teller yourself, you had to pick one team that would go from being unranked right now, not cracking that top 25, to being a top 10 season come the end of the year, what team is that?
So I'm going to go on a limb here. Now, just hang with me here. I have my reasoning. I'm going with the Florida Gators for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think Billy Napier is being super underlooked as a head coach. What he did at Louisiana for that program year after year after year, turning them into a Sun Belt team that was ranked top 25 consistently. What he's going to do at Florida, I think, is going to be absolutely unreal. And they have an opportunity to get it started great right off the bat, opening up with Utah. Utah's ranked 7th in the country. Florida's a home underdog at 2.5 right now. That's a very winnable game for them in the swamp. Utah coming down, getting that September humidity in Florida. I see them winning that game, honestly. And then, they have 2 tough games back-to-back on the road in October and early November with Georgia. Obviously, that game's in Jacksonville. And then A&M. But I see them beating up on the teams that are at their level or lesser in the SEC. I see them beating Kentucky in the swamp. I see them going into Neyland and beating Tennessee. I see them defending home turf against LSU and taking care of business against the teams like Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Florida State. I'm riding with the Gators, and I will fully admit it if I'm wrong, but I think they're going to jump out to a hot start and be able to carry that through a lot of the season.
So I will build upon what you just said. I will pick an SEC East team that some people are high on right now, some people aren't. I know you in particular may not be, but I'll go with Florida's rival, the Tennessee Volunteers. They're sitting at number 26 unofficially, right? They had the highest number of votes of the teams that did not make the top 25. To your point, just looking at their schedule, of course, they play at Pittsburgh week 2. They've got that Florida game in week 4. They go to LSU. Other ranked games throughout the season, Alabama, Kentucky, both at home, and then Georgia on the road the first week in November. I would not be surprised if they come out of that 10-2 or 9-3. Now, I don't know how they do it. I'm not here to explain how that happens, but I can see it happening. If they can upset Alabama or Georgia, which may not necessarily seem like the most likely on paper, but we saw what their offense could do last year. Well, now they have one more year under Heupel to pull that off. They're not facing a Georgia defense that was as good as it was a year ago. Alabama's having some moving parts across the board as well. Florida, of course, as you mentioned, with Billy Napier, a lot of moving parts there. If I was to look at a team that could potentially get up there, it pains me to say it, but I would not be surprised if it was the Tennessee Volunteers.
Well, they've never let their fans down recently in any sport, so.
Never. Okay, so flip side of it, Zach. Flip side of it. So in the past 20 seasons, going back to trends, in the past 20 seasons, with the exception of 2019, at least one program has finished unranked after being in the top 10 to begin the year. Last year, we had 3 different teams do it. In fact, we had North Carolina, we had Texas A&M, and we had Iowa State. Now, if you had to look at the top 10 right now, which only have to give me one. Which program do you think would finish unranked after starting the season in the top 10?
Well, I know you said one, but I kind of want to give you 2.
Fair. No worries. Yeah.
Okay. We do a big hero ball with y'all. The first one's going to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame's schedule is absolutely brutal. At Ohio State to start. They got to host BYU. That's no slouch. They also got to play Clemson and at USC to end the year. Now, I know we just talked a little bit about USC and what their potential could be. I think Lincoln Riley have them playing really good football come November. Those are 4 games right there that I think may not win those. I'd probably pick against them in all 4 of those. And then just looking at the rest of the schedule, they got to go play at North Carolina. That's not going to be an easy game either. They got to go play at Clemson. The Dome can be tough. Notre Dame would be my first team, and then the second team, it's Texas A&M again. They're going to repeat their history last year, starting top 10 and finishing up. They got to play Miami, Arkansas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, LSU. I see them probably finishing up close to 8-4, maybe even a 7-5 record. I know Jimbo's got his mouth running, but until he gets that team running a lot better too, I don't really foresee them holding up that top 10 ranking, especially playing the level of teams that they're going to be playing this year.
Earlier in the episode, I talked about how I thought Oklahoma was too high, and I would take it a step further to say that come the end of the season, I'd be shocked, not shocked, surprised if they were still ranked. Looking at their schedule, there aren't a lot of landmines. I mean, they do play Kansas, and as we know, that can be a struggle for Texas. You never know about Oklahoma. They did struggle a little bit there a year ago. The only 2 ranked teams that they play this year, home against Baylor and Oklahoma State. So the schedule is very friendly to them. So you'd have to think this is going to require some massive collapse in the Oklahoma Sooners program for them to come out unranked. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to lose 1 or 2 of these games against unranked teams, having to go to Iowa State, having to go to TCU, having to go to Nebraska. We don't know what Nebraska's going to do. I don't really expect Nebraska to be a high caliber program this year, but you never really know. And ultimately, going into a season with so much change, again with Brent Venables coming in and a lot of moving parts in the coaches area as well in the locker room, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Oklahoma kind of slip up this year and maybe, just maybe, end up on the outside looking in when it comes to the top 25 at the end of the year.
That wouldn't surprise me either. I know Dylan Gabriel's there from UCF. I don't see him going there and having the Jalen Hurts transfer in kind of year. I don't see him living up to even like the Spencer Rattler hype either when he was there. I kind of agree with that, honestly, myself. And to just jump on as we wrap this segment up, the Nebraska thing. I think I kind of like Nebraska this year. I got to be honest with you. I could see them even being a top 25 team by the end of the year. If you would have asked me who do I think could end up top 25 that's not ranked, I would probably say Nebraska. Yeah, I think Oklahoma, too, plays down to a lot of their competition. I mean, Nebraska gave them a tough game last year. And now the game's in Lincoln this year, too. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with there. I like the Oklahoma pick, though. I definitely could see them sliding down throughout the season and finishing outside looking in the top 25 at the end.
Perfect. So 2 other trends to look out for. I won't ask for your picks on these yet because this will give away your national championship pick, and I think we'll save that closer to the actual beginning of the college football season. But 2 other trends to look out for based on this preseason poll. 16 out of the 18 AP preseason ranked number 1 teams have failed to win the national championship. Only 2 have done it, and that was 2017 Alabama and 2004 USC. And then also, since 2004, every national champion was ranked among the AP preseason top 7 except for 2 teams, the Auburn Tigers in 2010 and the 2013 Florida State Seminoles. So if you're looking for your national champion, it'll probably be Alabama or Ohio State or Georgia or Clemson or A&M or Utah or Notre Dame. We'll see, but it's more than likely it'll probably be one of those teams. And of course, we'll get into our actual picks for the season and kind of what we expect for the national championship picture as we progress here throughout the season. But I just want to give you those brief trends to kind of give you an idea as to what we could see over the coming weeks. I think that'll do it for Let's Crack It Open. Let's all pass it over to NASCAR 1 to go.
White flag, next one is it.
So as we go into the Watkins Glen weekend ahead, of course, we did have a lot of rumors this past week as well surrounding Kyle Busch, surrounding 2311, surrounding Stewart-Haas Racing, Cody Ware, Rick Ware, Cole Custer, where all that fits into play. Zach, your initial thoughts. I saw one report potentially that Kyle Busch could be going to 2311 Racing. I saw another that said he could be going to Stewart-Haas Racing. What are your initial thoughts, and where do you think he could end up?
Well, I mean, there's just been a lot of conflicting stuff coming out this week. I mean, looking at the Cole Custer stuff, I mean, Greg Zipadelli who's heavily involved in the competition side of things over at Stewart-Haas Racing, said today that Cole Custer is going to be back in that 41 car, and they're still trying to finalize stuff with the 10. Kind of a curveball from where we kind of thought everything was over there at this point. I'm still kind of inclined to think that maybe Custer's not going to be back in that car. Yes, I know his father is the president over there at Stewart-Haas Racing, but to me, if I'm Stewart-Haas, am I really going to pick Cole Custer over Kyle Busch? I mean, that would be beyond stupid for a lot of reasons. So, personally, I think the best thing that could come out of all this for Stewart-Haas Racing would be to ship Cole Custer over to Rick Ware Racing, put him in the 15 car, give them an alliance that allows Cole to still learn, but also opens up a seat in one of your premier teams to get Kyle Busch in your car. We also heard from Corey LaJoie this week on his podcast that there's a Ford team going after Kyle Busch, presumably SHR. There's a Chevy team going after Kyle Busch, presumably Kaulig. And there's a Toyota team, presumably 2311. I tend to agree with all of that. I don't really see him finding a seat driving for Denny Hamlin. Your coworker as your boss is not really something I think many people would be interested in doing. But again, this all kind of shakes down to what manufacturer is going to step up and help fund, because this isn't just about Kyle Busch, the Cup driver. This is about Kyle Busch, the Truck Series team owner. And Toyota has invested a lot of money into that Truck Series development program that's gotten guys up to the Cup Series, like Christopher Bell, like Eric Jones. So I would like to see Kyle remain at Toyota for a couple of reasons there, mainly that keeping that truck team afloat. But we still don't know. We don't know much of anything with this. It's all just speculation and smoky mirrors.
We don't. And one of the really interesting angles that I saw, of course, is the conversation around Kurt Busch. We still don't fully know what his health looks like at the time of recording. And one of the conversations to this point in time has been, well, what if he can't physically, from a health standpoint, suit up again next year? Then could Kyle then fill his spot and then bring in Ty and take over Kyle's spot with Gibbs? Now, of course, that's dependent on what Kurt's situation looks like. The other side of it, and this is something I'm sure you probably heard, Zach, is the consideration to buy a charter. Would 2311, if they were to get Kyle Busch, they'd have to buy a charter. And some of the conversation from what I heard is charters are costing $20 million right now. Is that true?
Yeah, and then you look at what 2311 paid last year to get the second charter for Kurt Busch this year. They paid $13.5 million. So those have gone up substantially in the last year, which is a good thing, I think, for the owners and just the team security in general. But that's a lot of money to throw down right now. And then, you have to also think, okay, well, who's selling a charter, right? That becomes a big question. If you look at the Stewart-Haas situation, I don't want Rick Ware to sell one of those charters because I might throw Cole Custer in that car, So that becomes a very interesting angle in all this, though, too, is like, how would 2311 take in a Kyle Busch at this point? Because you have to pay $20 million for a charter and then about $15 million for Kyle Busch's salary. So that's $35 million that, for a guy that's won 4 races in the last 3 years, may not be worth it. To a Stewart-Haas, yes. Keep the $20 million in your pocket. Give him the $15 million he wants. He makes your organization better. Cole Custer gets some more time to learn about the car. Gets him ready to take over eventually when Kevin Harvick or Al Mirola retires, whenever that's going to be. And I think that makes way more sense for SHR to take him in than it would for 2311 at this time.
You brought up a name that I know we've talked about a little bit on the show, and he's had a lot of struggles at the top level, at the Cup level. Cole Custer, near and dear friend of mine, not really, but I love him. He's never really caught on too well at the Cup level. He did great in Xfinity, and you mentioned his father being the president of Stewart-Haas. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the conversation most recently has been pushing him to Rick Ware Racing, like you mentioned. But the flip side of it is there was some conversation as to, would Rick Ware Racing sell a charter, and if so, then he has to pick to whether he would put his son, Cody Ware, in that car, or if he put Cole Custer in that car if given the opportunity to. If that hypothetical situation played out, what would you do if you are Rick Ware?
If I'm Rick Ware, I'm keeping both charters and I'm getting Cole Custer in my car. Um, I think what Rick Ware does hinges on what Kyle Busch does. If Kyle Busch goes to 2311, Rick Ware is probably selling one of their charters and keeping his son in the other one. If he goes to Stewart-Haas Racing, they'll probably keep them both and getting a nice alliance from Stewart-Haas Racing for Cole Custer's car at least. So, if it came down, like the hypothetical you said of picking Cole Custer or Cody Ware, depending on the package, I'd probably roll with Cole Custer because of the money that's going to be coming in with him from Stewart-Haas Racing to make the team go faster.
Sure. And of course, Cole Custer does come with some brand name, a little bit, not a tremendous amount, but some. He's got some sponsors out there that have brought him some notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is true. Dixie Vodka is a great friend of mine.
Dear friend. Love all of his sponsors. Moving on to this weekend, Zach, we have Watkins Glen, the final road course of the regular season. What can we expect? What can our listeners expect to see on track?
I said this before. I thought it would be kind of a tame race at Richmond. It got pretty wild at times, guys going 4 and 5 wide. Everything in me wants to say, well, I think this will probably be a pretty tame race as well. Watkins Glen hasn't been that exciting in quite some time, in my estimation. But this year keeps surprising me. And the last thing I'm going to do is say a race in 2022 is not going to be exciting. So I'm going to say it's going to be a little bit chaotic. I don't see a new winner happening. And I do see some strategy taking place, especially at the end of the stages, like with all the road courses. We saw last week that point differential between Blaney and Truex get a little bit bigger. Truex is going to have to go for the win. I don't think there's a way he can point himself past Blaney unless Blaney has a severe problem, or unless they can guarantee where Truex is going to get a lot of stage points and Blaney's not going to even get any. So I foresee Chevy dominance continuing on a road course in a race that's pretty exciting this weekend.
So you mentioned that you see Chevy doing well this week, and I think that leads right into both of our picks, actually. This week, I have watched so many road courses since last July, which was the last time that Chase Elliott won a road course, if you recall. Road course king. He's won it 7 times. Mm-hmm. He's gone out there and won just about everything, and he's won it at Watkins Glen. He's won it just about every track you can think of that's a road course, and yet he hasn't done it in a very long time. So, against better judgment, I'll ride with Chase Elliott to go out there and win the race. I don't know how we'll do it, but you can't question the road course king. He's done it before. He's won at Watkins Glen. I'll take him again this week. Zach, what do you think?
I like it. I don't see Tyler Reddick going out there and winning again. Watkins Glen is a far faster road course than we have had with a lot of the other ones recently that Tyler Reddick's been really good at. Those technical, really methodical tracks that he's been doing well, I think benefit the RCR side of things. When it comes to horsepower, give me Hendrick every single time. I'm going to follow suit with your pick, and I'm going to pick the driver of the number 5, Kyle Larson, this weekend. If I could, though, the thing I think people need to look for this week, if you're like an in-depth fan like we are, and you really want to see where things are lying heading into the playoffs, watch Ross Chastain this weekend. Trackhouse has the speed to go out there and lead every single lap, I'd say, this week at Watkins Glen. Can Ross Chastain put together a clean race and bring home a top 10 in the first time in 4 races? This is a guy who's been a championship threat since early part of the year. He's fallen off a cliff right now, and he can't seem to stay out of his own way. So keep your eyes at the front. Keep your eyes on the battle between Blaney and Truex. Watch what Ross Chastain does this weekend, because this, I think, will be a telltale sign of what we can come to expect in the playoffs for somebody who at a lot of points this year was looking like a Final Four lock.
I agree, and especially going into Daytona, you can get any single ounce of momentum that you can gain is incredibly valuable, because we all know that all that could just be wiped away in the span of 3 hours come August 27th. You never know what's going to happen at Daytona, and you want to get as much momentum as possible. one last thing on this weekend, Zach. What is your headline? If you are to predict the future once again, your headline Sunday night after the race, what does it read?
I think Kyle Larson's back. He hasn't obviously won since the second race of the year in Fontana. He's had a lot of opportunities to get a victory this season. Similar to Chase Elliott last year, I think the defending champ's going to go into the playoffs with 2 wins at tracks that he's succeeded at in the past. Obviously, he dominated the racer last year. I think Kyle Larson throws himself and inserts himself as not just a consistent driver over the past few months, but as somebody who can go out there and get a win.
Now, this one's a little bit of a snowball for me. I tried it a week ago, and it didn't quite hit, but I'm going to try it again. So, I picked Chase to win the race, but I'll take it a step further and say that he will come out of this race the regular season points champion. And if I get that wrong, I might not even show up for the next show, honestly. I don't know.
There's something severely wrong if he doesn't win the regular season championship this week.
I don't know. It's going to he has to finish 34th or worst to not win it this week. So I'd say that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah.
I would
put money on it.
So hopefully that goes well. But we'll see how it progresses, of course. That'll do it for our show to end our week, to end the Friday show for the week. We thank you, as always, for tuning in. Of course, encourage you to check us out on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and, of course, TikTok. Thank you, as always, for joining and allowing us the opportunity to talk some ball with y'all.
Catch you on Monday.